we've talked about a lot of different weird controllers before, and a lot of them have come from Hori, and this next one is no exception, although I think it has one of the most interesting gimmicks that we've seen them do historically. This is a PS2 controller that lets you do this. This controller lets you split it in half and use each side independently while playing a game, although since it is an old school PS2 controller, you still need to actually connect them with a cable. But it ends up working out a lot like this very old school version of what we currently have with the Joy-Cons on the Switch, or maybe even a Wiimote and Nunchuck from the Wii. It's this very comfortable experience where you don't have to have your hands together at the same time, or if you prefer, you can just put them back together and use it like a regular controller. Now, of course, I could test this out on a PS2, and we've done that before with other retro controllers, but there's something else that we're gonna take a look at today with this that's also interesting. We actually found an adapter that allows you to use PS1 and PS2 style controllers on a PS4. So we're gonna take this controller and try it on a modern game. There's a few interesting things going on with this controller aside from the obvious fact of how it, well, splits. Now, because of the fact that you can't make use of any of the middle section of the controller, everything's been relocated to this right-hand side of it. You've got the select, start, and analog switches all down here, and you'll also notice that the L1 and L2 buttons have been placed here, even though we have them over here as well. And the reason for that is that this controller actually has 3 different modes of use. There's together, like a regular controller. There's the split design, where you're using a cable between them, and you have this kind of just relaxed controller on either side of you motion, or you can actually play with just the one right-hand side by itself as a one-handed controller design. And the way that works is you still have those shoulder buttons right here, and then you use the switch to change what exactly this stick does, either acting as the left joystick, the right joystick, or as the arrow keys. Now, obviously, this is not something that will work for every game out there, but in ones that just need that kind of minimal input, it's an interesting option to have, and it's very reminiscent of another PS2 Hori controller we've looked at before, which offered that kind of one-handed gameplay style. Now, this very modular aspect of the controller is very interesting, but the part that I find the most compelling and really want to talk about is using the 2 controllers when they're connected by a cable, because I really think this is the most interesting idea that was very much ahead of its time, because like I said, it's something that in practice is very similar to what Nintendo did with the Wiimote and Nunchuck, or even more so the pair of Joy-Cons. This idea of having a single controller that isn't actually one controller tied together like we're so used to. It's this kind of liberating, comfortable option of just being able to have both controllers and you can lay back with them. So we're just gonna mess around playing Kingdom Hearts 3 with this. I'm just at the very beginning of the game. And yeah, I mean, this definitely working. I'm actually surprised, more than this controller, the adapter surprises me. I really thought this was gonna be a bigger problem, but no, I mean, it's reading all my inputs fine. So I'm gonna admit, it's a little less comfortable than a normal controller if I'm doing it like this, but that's mostly for the benefit of you guys being able to see the controller. I think if I could just play like down here and just not even think about it, like I was laying down on a couch or just hanging out somewhere in a chair and just didn't even have my arms up, this would actually be really comfortable. By the way, if you guys are wondering how a PS2 controller can actually fully work on a PS4 controller, well, while you're using this adapter, most of the buttons you need for most games are on both controllers. The only thing a PS2 controller is really missing is the touchpad and a home button. So for the home button, there's actually a hotkey with this adapter where you just hit the left analog and start at the same time. For the touchpad, there's options for like pressing down on parts of it by using a directional stick and start, but there's no way to actually copy like the full motion on a touchpad. So in a game that actually needs like in-depth touchpad controls, you're not gonna get that with this. But otherwise, for the vast majority of games, this works. Yeah, I really gotta say that so far while just playing with this, I mean, I have some complaints about it as a controller in general, which we'll talk about a little later, but just the basic concept of having this cord, I mean, the cord itself is a little silly, but being able to just hold either side of the controller wherever I want within reason, it does add a certain degree of comfort here that you don't really get with traditional controllers. So I've been messing with it in the extended form like this. Let's go ahead and switch back to it as a regular controller just for a little bit to see how it compares. It's kind of weird going between these because it's more comfortable and it's less comfortable at the same time. Like this feels familiar. Like I'm used to having a controller like this. The only time I don't hold a controller like this anymore is if I'm either on keyboard and mouse or if I'm using Joy-Cons. But most controllers, this is the experience. And there's something just familiar and comfortable about that. Whereas if I'm using it in the split mode, it's different, but it kind of works out better, I think. Real quick, I just want to talk about this adapter we picked up. This is a PS2 to PS3 or PS4 controller adapter that's made actually by Brook Accessory, the same guys that made that Xbox One controller adapter that lets you use it wirelessly with other Bluetooth devices. And if you're interested in checking this out, I'll have a link down below. But when we first got it, I actually thought it was broken because I just couldn't get it to work with any of our PS2 controllers. And then I realized what the issue was, and it's actually really dumb. The base here that's behind the USB port itself, it's just a little too big to fit inside the lip of the PS4, at least the PS4 Pro. So it'll look and feel like it's plugged in all the way, but it's actually only like 70 or 80% of the way there. So you actually have to plug it into the back USB port. That's gonna give you enough room. So if you pick this up and you're wondering, why doesn't this work? Try that. It's interesting to try out this controller on a modern system because it really makes you think about the approach companies take to designing the controllers that we're currently using. Because, yeah, look, for its time, it was an okay so-so controller. I mean, the buttons or whatever, the stick heads are tiny and not very comfortable, the D-pad's very mushy. It's an old third-party controller, but just the concept of splitting it and being able to use both ends is something that I think modern console manufacturers should actually take a look at. And clearly, Nintendo's one of those companies that has, because that's how Joy-Cons work. Don't get me wrong, I still love the traditional modern controller design, and that is still a controller I would prefer to use for serious gaming. If I'm doing something competitive or I'm playing a very difficult game where I gotta do a lot of complex inputs and stuff, yeah, I'm gonna prefer that for a pro controller design. But if I just wanna lay back and relax and play some games and just maximum chill possible, this is a really intriguing, cool idea. That's why I love the Joy-Cons on the Switch, because whenever I use it in docked mode, I don't like putting them in the comfort grip. I like just being able to lay my hands wherever they're gonna be and play a game and just not really have to think about it. And so to have something like that for PlayStation or Xbox or even something you could use on the PC, that's really awesome. And I kinda want it now.